Hey you guys, it's Peter, and welcome to my channel, Peterisms, where I tell stories of my life and just little things I've learned as I have grown into the person that I am today. And I was talking about something in my vlog last night, and once I turned my vlog off, I was like, I think this is a really important conversation to have on my Peterisms channel, so I'll just bring it up as a topic on here. And it's not really so much a story, although I can share parts of my life as far as counseling goes with how I think it would apply to you guys in finding the right counselor. So what I want to talk about today is finding the right counselor for you to talk to, finding the right life coach or therapist, and wanting to change that person if it's not working out and things like that. I think it is absolutely vital that you have a really good rapport with a counselor or life coach, and I'm just going to say counselor for this video, but counselor, life coach, therapist, psychiatrist, whatever. I think it's vital that you have a really good rapport with that person, or I don't think that you'll ever feel comfortable sharing anything personal about yourself with them. And I can only speak from personal experience. I have been to countless counselors in my life, right? Starting from a very young age, when my parents got, separated when I was like 7 or 8, I started going to see a child counselor. I don't really remember much about him, except for that he would play games with me and talk to me, and then as soon as I would, be done, he would bring my parents in behind a closed door for 5 or 10 minutes and talk to them. And what that did from a very early age was it made me distrust counselors because I thought they're going to go turn around and tell my secrets. So what was ingrained in me was, don't tell them anything. When I went through high school, it was the same thing. I was like, I'm not telling these people anything, and I went and I saw so many counselors in high school, I can't even tell you, for drug issues and, my parents' divorce, which they all thought, well, I had a huge issue with I actually didn't, on and on and on, And, I remember the last counselor that I saw in high school was this woman, and she was very nice, and she was very interesting, and she was into archaeology, and the majority of our sessions that my dad was paying, I think, $135 for to see, she would talk about her archaeological exhibits and her interest of reading, and we very rarely talked about Peter. And, one of the things that was interesting about that was that the very last session that I ever went to with her, she looked at me, and as I was walking out the door, okay, now I'm like, at the time, I think like 16, she said, I think that when you come next time, we're going to address some of your sexuality issues. I went down to my dad's car and I got in, and he goes, so how did it go? And I go, she's crap. I'm never going back to her again. And he goes, well, now wait a second. I said, you talk to her about whatever you want, but I am never going back to her again. Well, what I found out was she was the one counselor that didn't go behind my back and tell secrets. And so years later when I came out to my dad, well, 2 years later when I came out to him at 18, he goes, is that why you didn't want to, I said something about that, and he goes, is that why you didn't want to go back to her because she wanted you to talk about your sexuality issues? I was like, yes. She was like the only one that didn't tell my parents behind my back, and I could have trusted her to actually come out fully and talk about things with a stranger, and yet I didn't do that because I didn't trust the process. And I think that that is so important, is trusting the process and trusting the person. And, that's always been vital to me as far as finding somebody and also being that person on the other end. And, I've had so many friends of mine that have gone to counselors through the years, and that, at some point they'll say, I'm just not getting what I want anymore. I'm just not getting what I need from this person anymore. They used to be so good, but now I'm not finding anything, I'm not getting anything that I need from them anymore. And I always say to them, because I've been in that chair before of the counselor that's sitting there thinking, are they getting what they need? Are they not getting what they need? those kinds of things. And, and I would always bring up every month and a half, hey, where are we at as far as achieving your goals and things like that. And, when I was a life coach working, with mostly people in the corporate world, I'd say where are we at as far as achieving your dreams and a promotion, and where do you want to be 5 years from now and things like that. And, but a lot of counselors don't do that. And the reality is, and I'm going to get, this is not me being very nice to the profession of counseling, but the reality is that for a lot of counselors and a lot of therapists, you're coming in to see them every week is an annuity, okay? That you are paying them, and so for them to mix that up or say, hey, I think you're successful and you're done, is not good business. And one of the things I have not been through the years is a good businessman, because I've had so many clients that I've looked at and I've said, you know, I really don't think that you feel you need to come in here anymore. Like, these were the goals that we set for you. You've gotten this promotion. You know, you're married now. You're in the relationship you want to be in. And I think we've come to the end of our road. If you'd like to check in maybe once a month or call me when something's going on, we can do that. And I've always been that person, you know, because I felt so taken advantage of for years by counselors that would literally let me sit in a chair time and time again and never really address the real issues. And I remember when I first got out of treatment, I had this counselor that I was referred to because A, he was in recovery, and which he never talked about his recovery, and B, he was gay, and he never talked about being gay. So I'm not really sure why I was referred to somebody that was supposed to make me feel more comfortable with being gay and being in recovery, although they never talked about that issue. And he always sat behind this pad, and one time he would just like sit there holding this pad up, and I could really never see him, and you know, so I just, you know, press conference. And what I mean by that is that my mom went to see counselors and analysts and therapists for years, and she would say, I just feel like what I'm doing is a press conference. Like, I'm not really getting anything out of it. I'm just reporting on what my week was like. And that is what I did, and it was a waste of time. I could have been doing that journaling. And one day I looked, I kind of like moved to the side, and he had his eyes closed and was asleep behind that pad. And I was like, oh, I am not going back to him anymore. And I didn't. And, you know, he called me like twice after that and said, hey, I just wanted to check in. You didn't reschedule. All right. No, we rescheduled, and then I called like late at night and I left it on his voicemail. Shady. I wouldn't do this today. I would not do this today. But I called him and I said, hey, I just wanted you to know that I can't make that appointment. I'll call you to reschedule. And then I never did, right? And I have been on the receiving end of that too. And he called me twice and he was like, hey, I just want to check in, see if everything is okay. You know, did you want to reschedule? What happened? I'm a little confused. I wish I would have, you know, at the time had the guts to say to him, listen, I felt like I was coming in there and I was just getting a press conference or giving a press conference. I felt like you weren't real interested in what I had to say. In fact, one time I looked and you were asleep behind the pad. You know, I didn't even give him the opportunity to say, really, I was just listening. I wasn't asleep, or, you know, like that's kind of like the way that I work or whatever. And I could say, well, I need more interaction, because that is what I need on the receiving end of a counselor. Is I need that person to say, well, this is what I think, or this is what I think you should do. And I think that most of us, when we go in, we know what we're seeking. We know what we're looking for, right? And if we're not getting that, then we need to give that to that person sitting in that chair who is the expert and say, this is what I'm looking for. Can you do this for me? Or say, if you can't, then I need to find somebody else. And if that counselor is resistant to that, you need to find somebody else right away anyway, okay? I have never been that person. I've always been like, hey, if you want to find somebody else, let me help. If this isn't a good fit for you, let's find somebody else for you, because you deserve to have the best fit with the best person possible. So, flash forward to my husband and I entering marriage counseling a year ago. And I, as a counselor that had been a counselor, then was a life coach, and now I'm doing corporate training, I was completely resistant to this, okay? Because I had been this person for so many years doing marriage counseling, right? And I was like, I don't want to do this. When I would always say to people, like, what's your fear of walking in there? And yet, I had the same fears as those people walking into my office, and I wasn't willing to own it. So, you know, I said to Alex, he was the one that was pushing it for it at the time, and I said, you find the person, but these are the things I want. I want the person to be able to speak a language of recovery, because that's very important to me. I want them to be focused on reunification and not separation, because I know a lot of counselors out there that are like, well, why don't we separate for a while? And I don't believe in that. So I wanted somebody that believed in reunification of a relationship and that worked on goal setting and problem solving. I didn't want somebody that was going to sit there and make us talk about shit from when we were 2 years old. I knew all that stuff. I've done enough work on that. I didn't need to talk about it. So he finds this guy, and we struggled so hard because I was like, okay, Alex was like, yeah, let's find, I found this guy, let's go in and talk to him. I was like, no. My control issues came out everywhere, right? And I was like, no, let me talk to this guy on the phone. So we like had such a hard time getting in touch with each other, and finally I got a hold of him, and so I'm like asking him all these questions, and he said to me, he was like, Peter, he goes, let me just tell you something, okay? He goes, I'm very well versed, because I was like asking all these 12-step questions. He goes, I'm very well versed in recovery. About half of my clients are all in recovery. I'm not, but I understand your concern. He goes, I've read these texts. I know this. I know about, and I was like, and he goes, you need to stop worrying about it and just trust the process. I was like, did he just really say that to me? When I had told that to hundreds of people before, right? And I was like, okay, so this person really speaks my language. And I'll never forget, I went in there and we found this guy, and he's like mid-30s, married, 2 little kids, really nice guy, right? And we sit down, and I'm like, I look at him, and he goes, do you have anything to say before we start this? And I said, yeah. I said, I just want you to know. And this was really hard for me, you guys. I could almost start tearing up thinking about it. I looked at him and I said, because I had dealt with this so many times, and it was literally sabotage on the first session. I said, I am not going to be the counselor that walks into your office and tells you how to do your job. I want to get well. I want our marriage to be the best possible. So do your magic. Do your work. This man has been incredible. And if you watched our Q&A that Alex and I did, it has literally saved our marriage and turned our marriage from down here to just like, I mean, we have the most passionate, amazing marriage today, and it's fantastic. And we're getting ready actually with counseling session in a half an hour. And, but you know, like, the day that I'm not getting what I need in there anymore is the day that I will look at my counselor and say, hey, I'm not feeling like we're getting what we need to get in here anymore. Can we kind of like, you know, reevaluate our goals or reevaluate our needs? Or if I need to find somebody else, can you recommend somebody else to us that will take us to the next part of our journey? You've taken us this far. That's been fantastic. I know from having talked to him that he will never stand in the way of that. I also know from talking to him that if we need to like change things up, he'd be more than open to listening to that and working with us. It is so important that when you see a counselor, that you find somebody that will meet you where you're at, meet your needs, and listen to you as a client. That is vital. But your role as a client in that chair is to also listen to the expertise and the journey of the person that is, you know, guiding you along the way. For years, I told people, I am but a sounding board sitting here in an office. I am but somebody that has been allowed to come on your journey of your life, and what an honor that is. Find a counselor, a life coach, a therapist, a psychiatrist, whatever you're seeking. Find a person out there that will feel like it is an honor to be on the journey with you along your life. I love you guys, and I will see you tomorrow. Bye.